When we prepare our students for the future now, for their futures, we have to realise the world is changing very fast and that the work that they will need to do is very different to what we have done.
In English language teaching, students aren't just developing language, they're developing a whole range of other skills.
To negotiate, they need to communicate with each other, they need to collaborate with each other.
The Cambridge Life Competencies Framework is a comprehensive system that includes 6 key competencies.
Creative thinking,
critical thinking, communication,
collaboration,
learning to learn, social responsibilities.
The framework looks at how these competencies develop over the learning journey.
right from pre-primary kindergarten all the way up to university and adulthood.
Each competency has its own set of can-do statements.
Descriptions of observable classroom behaviour.
These are really important for teachers as it allows them to see where students are doing well and where they need extra support.
Cambridge is the only publisher which is investigating how these skills can be integrated systematically into the learning of English.
Integrating the Life Competencies Framework into our materials means that teachers are able to focus more on these life competencies in their classes without actually having to put a lot more preparation into their lesson planning.
The framework offers a clear and unambiguous path to creating well-rounded individuals.
We understand that you want to give your students the best chance to achieve their ambitions.
It's really important that students are learning more than just the subject. Of course, it's important to learn English language, grammar and vocabulary, but it's also an opportunity to develop those skills which will help them become the people they want to become.
Hi there, nice. Renata Simões back. Here is Paul, my cat that is insisting on being with you live. Unfortunately, I have sometimes 2 people talking with me at the same time. So they are saying that I was not on air, so I'm going to say it again. I don't know if I was or not. So hi, I'm Renata Simões. I'm back here to Cambridge Day 2020. This is Paul, my cat, that is insisting on being with you today. We have people from Egypt, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil. I saw people from Ceará, from Rio de Janeiro on our chat. So nice to have you guys here. We are going to start this next session that will demonstrate a little bit about how the Cambridge Life Competencies Framework can be used to help teach life skills covers the BNCC, the Brazilian National Curriculum. Our next speaker is Jasmin Silver. She's a language research manager at Cambridge University Press. Hello, Jasmin. Nice to have you here.
Hi, nice to be here. I've just seen, all the different countries that are here. I'm surprised at even Spain.
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, together with your team, you use data-driven methods to investigate learning and teaching issues. Am I right, Jasmin? Could you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So our job essentially is to use research into language learning to improve our materials to get them the best they can be, to obviously help our learners learn English in the best way possible. So that's the main kind of reason for our team.
Well, I heard that you actually start training to become an English teacher in 2011, and that you want to become a teacher since you was a child. And I heard that you have so many experience in different countries and everything. So could you talk a little bit from your experience, which is, in your opinion, the uniqueness that all teachers in the world share, and what keep you working and being a speaker for ELT?
Well, yes, it's a big question. I think I've always been attracted to teaching. So yeah, I forgot that I told you that I was, as a child, I was sitting on my front lawn with a blackboard and inviting all the kids in the street to learn, I don't know, maths or something that I was pretending to teach them. I also had my own library as well. I had a little stamps when I was bringing out books. But yeah, I've taught in South Korea and in Germany and in the UK as well. Actually, in the UK, I was teaching other languages, so French and German. And they were very different experiences, but just the enthusiasm that teachers have, despite the difficult job. It's a really stressful job sometimes, but that really made me want to stay in English language teaching. And it's, events like these, obviously you get to see all the enthusiasm coming together. So it's really exciting to be here.
Well, I know that you have more challenge facing. The teachers are facing new challenges right now. So I will let you talk one-on-one with your fellows ELT. Thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you on Cambridge Day 2020, Jasmin.
Thank you. All right. So, welcome everyone. Like I said, it's great to see so many people here. And I really hope that you are going to continue to type in the chat. I might not be able to see everything, but I'll try and catch as much as I can. I really want today to be quite an interactive session. Usually if it were face-to-face, we would have lots of group work and things like that. But obviously online, that's a bit more difficult. So if you can at least type in the chat, that would be really great to share your ideas. All right, so let's get going. As you can see, my talk is about practical ways of bringing life skills into the young learner classroom. And I've linked that today to the Brazilian national curriculum. But if you are from a country or if you're in a context where you're not using the national curriculum, that's no problem, because all the activities here will be useful whichever context you're teaching in, if you're teaching young learners. So I've already been introduced. I'm Jasmin Silver, and please feel free to contact me through the chat as much as you like through this. I will try and pick up, as I said, as much as I can. All right, so let's get going. It's a bit of a strange slide to start with, but I particularly like this slide, and I think it's a nice intro into what we're going to speak about. So I don't know if you've seen this before, but this is from a series of postcards that were produced in 1900 in France, and they were predicting what the world would look like in 100 years, so in the year 2000. And this is what they thought school would look like. So you can see on the right, there's the teacher. He's feeding knowledge from the books into a machine. There's a little boy turning the handle, and all this knowledge is going up into the wires and into the brains of the students. So quite an interesting idea. I'm sure a lot of us have thought at one point or another, I wish I could just download or get students to download all the knowledge they need. But I just wanted to ask you, if we could do this, if we could have a classroom that looked like this, and you could download all the English vocabulary that students needed, all the grammar, would you want to do it, and why? And would there be anything missing? So if you would like to just put your comments in the chat, that would be great. All right, yeah, it is a beautiful picture. That is true. Never? Oh, okay, yes, strong words. Yeah, I wonder if anyone would like to build on that. Why would this not be your ideal classroom? It would be really boring, that's absolutely right. Or maybe it could be a foundation. I think I would like to go through that first. Yep. And yeah, they're all lonely. They're not interacting with each other. They're all just sitting there. They don't look particularly thrilled by the classroom, do they? And there would be no point. Yeah, no interaction. Okay, so there are lots of things here that I agree with, absolutely. And the one thing I think for me is that this doesn't seem to be preparing students for what we hope education is going to prepare them for. So it's not just about absorbing all the knowledge and then producing it for an exam. It's preparing them for their futures. And more governments now are making this a bigger thing in their national curricula. So you can see, for example, in the BNCC, they say education should contribute to values and stimulate actions that help the transformation of society, making it more humane, socially just, and also focused on the preservation of nature. So to me, this doesn't quite fit with that. So I think we have to think again about what education looks like. I'm sure none of your classrooms do look like this. So this foundation of preparing students for a future that will be more socially just and will make a better society is also the background to our Life Competencies Framework. So the BNCC and the Life Competencies Framework are very, very similar in a lot of ways. They come from the same idea that it's not just the knowledge, the English language that we need to teach our students, it's the life skills that we need to develop in them to help prepare them for the wider world. So that's the sort of background about how these two join together. So in this talk, I want to go into a bit more detail about what the Life Competencies Framework is and how it relates to the BNCC. And we're going to then take a practical look at effective materials that you can find and use and adapt to bring out life competencies in your students. And then finally, using the framework to design your own activities. So a lot to do in a short time, so we'll crack on. All right, so as a very brief overview, we have 6 competencies, so 6 life skills that we think are important to develop in our students that maybe you didn't see so much happening in that first picture. So creative thinking, critical thinking, learning to learn, communication, collaboration, and social responsibilities. And in the framework as well, we have 3 foundational layers which are sitting underneath these, and they are impacting all of these other competencies. So for example, emotional development, we need to manage our emotions, to be able to effectively collaborate with other people, to be in the right frame of mind to be creative. So that is what the foundational layers are showing. We don't have time to go into those today, but if you are interested in those, then you can find more information on our website, which I'll put up again later. So just to get to know the framework a little bit better, I have a little activity for you. Each competency we have broken down into core areas. So there are 3 or 4 core areas per competency to help you understand what is involved in each of those core areas. Now, I'm sorry if you're on a small screen because this will be quite difficult, but I'll just give you a couple of minutes, maybe just 30 seconds in fact, to see if you can match the competency to the core area. And we'll do one together just so it's clear. So on here on the left, you can see that we've got critical thinking. And if you have a look at all these core areas, you can see one of them says understanding and analysing links between ideas. And that, to me, sounds like critical thinking. Would you agree? We'll have to check. It is, in fact, critical thinking. So if you can see this big enough, please do type in, say, 1A, 2, whatever it is. I'm sorry if it's a bit hard to see. I'll read them out at the same time so that if you can't take part in the activity, you can at least hear what they are. So as well as understanding and analysing links between ideas, we've got creating new content from own ideas or other resources. See what that sounds like. We've also got managing the sharing of tasks in a project, managing conversations, understanding personal responsibilities as part of a group and in society, including citizenship, and reflecting on and evaluating own learning success. All right, so we've got lots of answers coming in. All right, let's see if you were right. So creative thinking, absolutely, it's B, so creating new content. Learning to learn was F, so reflecting. Communication was D, managing conversations. Collaboration, C, so managing the sharing of tasks in a project. And finally, social responsibilities, E, so understanding personal responsibilities in a group. All right, so that's just a little flavour of some of the detail that we've put in the framework, but there's a lot more there if you have a look on the website. So just to give you an example, in collaboration, you have 4 of these core areas. So taking personal responsibility for your own contribution to a task, listening respectfully, managing the sharing of tasks in a project, and working towards a resolution related to a task. And each of those will be broken down even further. So we understand that although we have these competencies and core areas, they're going to look quite different at different ages. So pre-primary is going to look very different from at work. So what we've done is we have put together some can-do statements to show what these competencies and core areas look like at each of those levels. So, for example, collaboration, again, this is very small, I am sorry. Managing the sharing of tasks in a project, that was the core area that we pulled out earlier, has a lot of detail in it on things that you might see your students at this level doing, which will look quite different from, say, the adult stage. So just as an example, identifies the subtasks that the group must do to achieve the main task. The one at the bottom states the strengths and weaknesses of the group's efforts once they have finished the task. So there's lots of detail in here, and hopefully you can start to see how you might use this to design activities. All right, so let's get on to some bigger text, I think. Slightly. So as I said, the Cambridge Life Competencies and the BNCC come from the same kind of philosophy that we need to teach life competencies, life skills, as well as the pure language of English. So there are 10 general competencies of the BNCC, and you can see that we have matched them to our life competencies. So if you, for example, want to look at number 6, diversity and citizenship, you could look at our social responsibilities brochure, and then you could use some of the ideas from those to build the competencies of diversity and citizenship in your classroom. Equally, if you wanted to build social skills and collaboration, you could look at our collaboration booklet. So I understand these slides will be made available on YouTube. So if you want to go back and have a look at these later on, then that's fine. Or you can email me and I'll send you the slides if you need those later. All right, so how can you then use these two things together? So I've just got 2 ideas. You might have your own ideas. But first of all, you might take a competence within the BNCC, find the corresponding competency in the Life Competencies Framework, so what I was just showing you, and then use the information in the booklets, the core areas, the can-do statements, to plan your lessons. So that's one way you could do it. Alternatively, maybe you have a textbook that you're following and that makes your curriculum, so you don't have as much freedom to do the first thing that I've said. So in that case, you would have a look at what's coming up in your textbook, look at the topic that's coming up, then have a look at what kind of competencies you think could work well with those, and then go to the booklets and find some can-do statements and core areas that can help you plan. And finally, you can then relate that back to the BNCC. So if you need to report to your school, for example, on how you have integrated the BNCC into your lessons, then you can use this as well. So let's get a bit more practical now. We're going to explore materials and see how we can do this in practice. I'm sure you're ready to go and get some ideas going between us. So I'm going to show you an example of a textbook for primary students called Power Up. And in this textbook, you can see that they have a topic of love your city. And you've got a number of pictures of people doing things that are maybe not so great. And they have to decide whether what they're doing is okay or not. And finally, at the bottom, they're matching up sentences to decide what they should do. So, for example, don't write your name on the wall. All right, so I just want you to take 1 second to have a look at the competencies on the side and tell me what competency you think is being brought out mostly in this activity. So I'm just going to see if anyone has the same idea as I do. So which competency on the right is this task developing? Oh, sudden, yeah, six, lots of sixes. Communication and social responsibilities. Yeah, absolutely. So you'll find that there is no 100% right answer, in that it will probably involve a lot of life competencies at the same time. But I agree with the majority of you that 6, it's really trying to bring out social responsibilities. So the good thing is that a lot of your materials will already be bringing out these competencies in your learners. So without even having to do any extra work, you can already start to develop. And as you can see, I know this is really small again, apologies, but this maps really closely to 3 can-do statements in the social responsibilities booklet. So the first one is describing roles and responsibilities they have as members of groups. The second one about cooperating, how to live together or peacefully, they say, following rules, and finally showing respect for belongings. So you can see how closely that fits with the can-do statements. So far we've had to do no work at all, but maybe we do want to do a bit more work. Maybe we want to work on these social responsibility competencies a bit more, and particularly about being part of a group and being responsible citizens of different groups. So I have one example of a way that I think you could extend this for your learners. But as I explain it, if you have any other ways you think you could extend it, please do write it in the chat box, because it would be really nice to share the ideas between us. And then what I always do is copy the chat from these kind of things and save it for later, because then that gives you a great resource for when you're going back to it. So the example here of a way that you can extend this activity is to get your students to solve a problem, a real life problem related to one of these things. So as a first step, you could use the pictures and say, are any of these problems in our town or in our school? So perhaps number 2, I know in schools I've worked in, number 2 has been a problem. So students writing on walls, particularly inside, maybe not outside, or writing on desks, or putting chewing gum under desks. All these kind of things are problems, common problems in schools that I've worked in. So together you decide what problems that they need to solve using these pictures. And then you can put students into groups and they vote on which problem they would like to have a go at solving. So once they have decided on the problem they're going to solve, they have to try and think of ways that they are going to solve the problem. It can be at a very basic level, obviously depending on how old your students are and their level. It can be very basic, but you'll be surprised how creative your students can be with this. So they could present it to the class in the end. Maybe they could present it in the form of a role play, that someone discovers someone writing on a desk. What are they going to do? Or it can be a poster that they're going to put up that says, do not write on the desks. There are all kinds of ways that you could bring this out in your learners. So in that way, you're helping them to take more responsibility for their actions in groups, and you're helping them sort of keep each other accountable. But you're also bringing out other life competencies like creative thinking. How are they going to solve this problem? Critical thinking as well. All right, so you have got loads of things coming in here. I'm just going to pick out a few So something about creating posters, promoting good behaviour at school, focusing on the real problems. Absolutely. I think it's really nice to bring this into real life. Puppet shows, yes. Or memes. Yeah, that can be a very creative and also entertaining way of bringing life competencies into the classroom. Absolutely. We've got posters, bit of a TV show, something from Netflix, and ask them what they think about it. Yeah, so a TV show that presents a problem, and ask them for a solution. Absolutely. And writing activities. Yep. Lots of opinion essays, fantasy narratives. Yeah, all kinds of options depending on how old your students are again. But yeah, really, really nice ideas. Create the story, fill in the empty balloon speeches. Absolutely. So maybe have a comic strip that they could make, or you can have made already, and they just fill in the speech. Interviews, role-playing videos, short stories. Yeah, all brilliant ideas. So these are all ways that you could extend this activity and get a little bit deeper into social responsibilities. Brilliant. So thank you very much for your ideas. If you want to keep typing them, feel free. I just want to do something similar, but approaching it from a different way with another part of social responsibilities. So here we've got the core area, understanding and describing own and others' cultures. And I particularly want to focus as a teacher on describing basic information about my own culture and looking at the similarities and differences between my culture and another culture. So again, you don't have to start from scratch. Your books generally tend to give you a good starting point. So for example, you might have an activity that looks at different types of housing. And here we've got houses around the world. So students are watching a video about different house types all over the world, from stilt houses to houseboats and detached houses to flats. And they are asked to see or to say what houses they see in their town. And then they go on to read about a boy who lives in a houseboat and compare his experience and the way he lives in a houseboat compared to how they live in a different type of housing, unless they live in a houseboat, of course. So you can see here that you're already bringing out these can-do statements to some extent. In the first activity, you're talking about your own culture. You're identifying different housing types in the places where you live. And in this activity, where you're comparing the two, then you are then you're looking at the similarities and the differences. So again, without any work, we've got a good start. But of course, if we want to look at this a little bit more deeply, we can get a bit more creative. So again, I'll give you an example, and please do write your own thoughts on the sidebar in the chat as well. So my idea is to have a virtual tour of a city of your choice, or maybe your students can choose it, using a maps website. So I use Google Maps. I've used Street View, if you're familiar with that, with my students. So what you can do is you can choose a place to start, and then your students can direct you, saying straight ahead, left, right. So they can have quite a lot of fun telling you where to go. And as they're doing that, you'll see the images. It will be like you're walking through the streets of that city or town. And you can do this for cities and smaller areas all over the world. So while they're doing that, they can notice what types of housing there are. And you can extend it to make it a lot bigger. So can you notice how busy the streets are? Is the sky clear? What does the weather look like? Are there many people there? There are lots of things that they can notice and write down or shout out, depending on what kind of atmosphere you want your class to have. And finally, students can compare their town with the one that they have just seen. So, for example, in my city, there are lots of bicycles. I'm talking about Cambridge. But in Seoul, there are no bicycles that I could see in my little tour, all cars. So I'll just show you a couple of screenshots of what that might look like. So this is actually a screenshot of Cambridge. I chose this because people always think of the normal places in Cambridge, but actually we have a lot of houseboats. So you can surprise your students sometimes. So yeah, you can guide, or your students can guide you through Cambridge, looking at the different types of houses and other features of the city. And it's always nice if you have lived somewhere else than your current city, particularly if you've lived abroad at all, to bring that into it. So I often used to use this image. It's probably a little bit too small to see which country it is, but if anyone is willing to have a guess. It is not in Europe, I'll tell you that. All right, I think you're all quite busy typing in ideas, which is brilliant. So I don't want to stop that. This is actually Seoul in South Korea. Ah, yes, you just got in there. Yes, it is Korea. And this building in the middle here is the first place that I lived in South Korea when I was teaching there. So you can bring a little bit of yourself to the classroom, and then that can encourage your students to ask lots of questions that can start helping them getting to know the culture a little bit more. So if you've got personal experience in a different city, use that as well. All right, so that was one idea. I saw lots of things coming in. Let me just see, before all the China, Korea stuff. So we could ask them to imagine themselves living in that place they're seeing, thinking about how nice it would be, how different, and the things they would do there. For example, living in a boat. Absolutely, yeah. Get them thinking creatively, and imagining themselves in a different place. I think there's a bit of a lag on the chat, which is why I've seen now lots of people wrote down South Korea and other countries. Okay, a couple more comments. Get some websites from architects. Yep, layout specific and well done. So this gives them an opportunity to use the vocabulary, what kind of house, and guess what kind of house they're looking at. It's a really nice idea. Also maybe interior design. So can you get your students to design a houseboat, or design a flat that's a little bit different from the normal? And maybe one more. Instead of saying the differences, yep, they could compare things, absolutely. So each student can give a question to the classmate on the right, and the student has to answer. Really nice. So then you're getting some collaboration going as well. Yeah, absolutely. There was a comment, I've lost it now in the chat, but saying we have to be careful of value judgments, and that's a really important point to make. And it's something to bear in mind when you're planning the lesson. Great. All right, we're going to do one more like this, and then I'm going to challenge you all with a slightly different task. Okay, so the last thing, again, I'm just using social responsibilities at the moment. I want to develop in my students an understanding of the need to share and protect resources. So I want to have a lesson on environmental issues. So in my textbook, luckily, again, there is already something there I can use. So this is a nice activity where you can see a number of items that have been made from what would usually be rubbish. So on the top left, you've got an elephant made out of plastic bottles. You've got a flower pot made out of a boot, a robot made out of computing equipment. So you can use this already very nicely with your students, and ask them also what they already reuse at home. But if you want to extend it a bit more, I don't know if any of you have heard of upcycling. It's a popular term in the UK, but I'm not sure how widely used it is. But it's basically using old things or rubbish to improve them and then create new things with them. So you might, for example, this boot in the middle here, that's an old piece of rubbish, although it looks quite nice in this picture, but we assume that no one wanted it anymore. So we've changed its use, we've made it better, and we have used it for something that's completely different. So what you can do is get your students to do some upcycling in your classroom. So you can ask students to bring in some items that they would usually throw away. I guess you have to be careful because you don't want them to bring in some old food that they didn't finish eating. But you can set some rules about what kind of things you want them to bring in. So milk cartons, cardboard boxes, anything like that that's dry and clean and good to use. And then in groups, students can pick some of the items that people have brought in. They can either pick their own or they can pick someone else's. And they have to try and think of as many new uses as they can for this item in 3 to 5 minutes. So this is a really good creative thinking activity. And then finally, each group chooses one of those ideas that they've come up with in that time, and they design their new object, or if it's possible, they actually make their upcycled product, and they can explain it then to the class. So this is really nice to get students creative about how they can recycle, not just throwing things away in a recycling bin, but actually reusing things in a slightly unusual way. So if you've got any other ideas, please put them into the chat. So let's see what we have here. Okay, I will come to the internet question in a moment. Socks for puppets. Yeah, that's a nice way of upcycling things. I've made a lamp out of a milk bottle before as well, which is quite amusing. Create their own toys and games. Yep, absolutely, especially with really young children. We call that junk modelling in the UK. I don't know if it's called the same elsewhere. Yep. All right. I think there are a couple more. A bottle of water turned into a vase. Yes. Yep. So yeah, lots of great ideas coming in there. Yes, great. All right. So we are just going to have a few more minutes. Hopefully you can start to get an idea of some ways that you can use the framework. Apologies if this is a bit fast and just throwing ideas at you. Hopefully you can go back and watch the recording if you need to pick up any ideas in a bit, if you need to go back again. All right, so let's assume that you have you're not using a textbook, or you want to plan a lesson without using the textbook, and you kind of want to start without any help from any materials. So you have to start from scratch. And this is your challenge. You want to teach daily routines. We've all had to teach that, and we've all taught it a lot, I guess. So you want to teach daily routine to your learners. For example, I get up, I have a shower, I wash my hair, I clean my teeth, those kind of things. And your challenge is to choose one life competency, and I've put a can-do statement next to each of those competencies, and see if you can come up with an activity that would help develop that can-do statement. So, for example, with critical thinking, the first one, my can-do statement here is compares different types of information So, for example, looking at similarities and differences. So you could have one person's daily routine compared to another person's, but make it a bit more creative, like a celebrity that they really enjoy. Maybe find out what their daily routine is, or maybe you can think of even more exciting things than that. Right, any ideas? So you can choose anything from here: creative thinking, communication, learning to learn, social responsibilities. All right. Yep, maybe you can compare siblings' rooms. Yep. You can compare all kinds. Yep. So these can-do statements are supposed to work with all different types of topics. So here you might use it for comparing daily routines, but you can compare all kinds of things. Yeah. So critical thinking, I would use debate in the class, dividing students into two groups and giving them a very controversial theme depending on their age. Yep, absolutely. So if you can do that using some kind of daily routine as your starting point, that would be really good. Oh, I love this one. Ask them to create a monster and imagine its routine. Maybe wake up at 3 and have roaches for breakfast. Oh, yes. New vocabulary and lots of laughs. Yeah, that's a really nice one. Okay. Yeah, and thinking about our current situation with COVID, how has it changed, comparing our daily routine now compared to what it was before COVID? That's something that's really topical at the moment. I know my daily routine has changed massively. Yeah, really nice. Thank you so much for all these activity ideas. So again, copy all this chat on the side and look at these later. But for now, I just want to leave you with a couple of tips for when you are doing these kind of activities, planning life competencies into your classroom. So when you're planning, when usually you would have a language learning objective, at least some of the time, see if you can put a life competency objective in at the same time. So having it there at the front or the top of your lesson plan can help you really think about how you're going to integrate into it the life competency into your class. And to help you do that, you can use the framework. So you can use the can-do statements, you can use the core areas to help you write a learning objective. And also, just to bear in mind, we haven't really talked about this, but some of these activities, because they're more life skilled oriented, might need a higher level of language than your students have. So think about, do you need to provide them with a bit of extra language, for example, to help them collaborate well together? Or are you going to allow a little bit of their first language? So you allow them, for example, to speak Portuguese for a little bit of the lesson to help the conversation start, and then for the important parts go back to English. So just have that in your mind when you're planning. Then during the lesson, make sure that your students know that they are working on life competencies. It's much more motivating, and it makes them notice how well they're doing at a certain life competency. So just like you would tell them that today we're going to learn about daily routines, also tell them, and we're going to look at how to compare similarities and differences. Then as your students are carrying out the activities, give them feedback, not just on what they are saying and the language that they're using, but also the life competencies that they are using, because this can help them develop not just their language skills, but also their life competency skills as well. But obviously you can't give feedback to everyone unless you have a very small class. So also encourage your students to self-assess. You can give them little checklists with smiley faces, or assess their friends, peer assess. So one thing I like to give students is a WWW and EBI, which they use in British schools a lot, which is what went well. So one thing that went really well today, and EBI, even better if. Next time I could do this. So this helps students reflect on their own learning and improve. And finally, use what you see in the class, use your observations to see where your students are strong and where they need a bit more development, and use that to plan your next lessons so that you can encourage them to develop more in areas. All right, and finally, after the lesson, do your own reflection. So what went well and what could be improved in the way that I taught this lesson and planned this lesson. It only takes a second to write down one thing that you thought went well and one thing that you would like to improve. And this is, I think, for life competencies is really nice. Like we've done today, share your successes, share your challenges with other teachers, join a community of teachers who are trying to do this in the classroom. You can get so many more ideas just sitting on your own planning. I know sometimes it's a bit of a headache, but if you can involve other teachers, that's really great. And then, as I said, use what you've learned to plan for future lessons. All right, we are rapidly running out of time, but just to let you know where to go next, we have a website, cambridge.org/CLCF. There you can download all the booklets for all the life competencies, and you can also see short videos of the team explaining what each of the competencies are. So if today was a bit quick, you can go back and digest a little bit more. We also have a YouTube channel for the ELT Cambridge University Press, and we have lots of nice webinars and teaching tips on how to bring out life competencies on there. So check those out. And we also have on our teacher development website some short courses on things like collaboration. So if you want to develop your skills further, then these are all good places to go. And if you need to get hold of the slides and can't, you can email me and I'll send you these, and then you can easily follow the links. So what's next for you? Just a suggestion, but I know all this information can be a bit overwhelming. So my suggestion is, I will skip this bit a little bit and tell you in a minute. My suggestion is to choose one life competency that you would like your students to develop most. So of those 6, just choose one. Go to our website and download that booklet and use the framework to help you plan an activity to develop this particular life competency in your regular language learning class. So just by focusing on one, it makes it a lot more manageable than trying to do all of the life competencies at once. And as we've seen today, even if you focus on one life competency, usually you will be working on more than one. So when you're working on social responsibilities, you're also working on collaboration, you're working on communication. So yeah, it's a really good place to start with just one, like we did today. All right, so that is it from me. Thank you very much for participating. It's been really great seeing all your ideas. If you would like to get in touch with me at all, my email address is here, jsilver@cambridge.org. And yeah, I'm very happy to take some questions now if you have any.
We have a lot of questions for you. I think that we are more excited about your I'm just trying to get a better light, because of course, as everybody, I'm working from home and my home was not supposed to do. Sorry, Jasmin. Thank you again. There are a lot of questions. One is mine, because I'm not only an English learner enthusiastic, but also a curious. You were talking about those activities relating the upcycling activities with the frameworks, and I think. Have you ever heard about artists that join the upcycling with their artwork? Do you think it's something, bringing art or bringing other layers into this conversation, are good activities. This is also to our how can I say, our support group. Bring our first question here on screen. That's all. So
okay, yes. So to answer the question,
my question is like to how can I say, to mix, to add new levels. Or you're talking about upcycling, then you can talk about art, and then you can talk about math and everything.
Yeah, it's a really nice way to bring in lots of different subjects and not just focus on the language, but yeah, open it. Why not? There's lots of art that uses rubbish or materials that are a bit unusual. And then you're bringing out creative thinking as well as social responsibility. So it's a really nice idea to do that.
Our first question is from Luis Chantre, I'm not sure. He's about São Paulo, Brazil, and he asks, what would you say are the biggest dangers for the class to get out of hand during those activities you presented?
Okay, yes. I think there's always a danger that the freer you get and the further away from the textbook and the normal routine that you get, the bigger the danger is, I guess, that things go a little bit, get a bit louder than usual and so on. And sometimes, sometimes that's actually good, that students have a bit more freedom and you can allow that to happen. But I think it's always good to, before you start any of these activities, to get the students themselves to set some ground rules, because they're not used to these kind of activities maybe. It's good for them to think about beforehand, okay, so how are we going to talk with one another, and how are we going to make sure we're going to stick to this task and not get too excited by other things. So setting good ground rules, I think, is one way of doing it. But I'm sure other people have, if other people have any ideas, please do add them as well.
Well, I think that there are probably this idea of getting the students out loud is the main danger of a teacher. We have Vicent Fati asking you, how can we truly stimulate communication and interaction with our pandemic reality on online classes? I feel that classes are getting teacher-centered with the tools we have in hand. This is a concern you share?
It is difficult. It is much more difficult. I mean, even today, like, this is not as interactive. I haven't had as much communication with a lot of you as I would have liked to. Although, on the other hand, there are a lot more people here than probably would have been able to make it in a face-to-face setting. I think we need to be creative, obviously, now with online classes. They aren't the same, and there's a whole different way of communicating, it feels like sometimes when it's online. But if you have got video chat, maybe getting students into smaller groups, if you have breakout rooms, that's really helpful for communication. For example, in Zoom, you as the teacher can go to different breakout rooms and speak with your students. If you're not able to do that, then perhaps having some of this speaking and communication as homework. They can record something to you, send you a video, and you can send something back. So it's not quite the same, but there are ways that we are finding, all of us, I think, at the moment, to be more communicative online, and it will get better. Yeah.
It's we all sharing this idea. Leonardo Tonasso, Miss Silver, in a world with so much information, do you think learners should be taught how to learn collaboratively in order to communicate better? And he thinks literally about thinking critically, creativity. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I think collaboration is a really important skill. As we said at the beginning, it's not all about knowledge, and there's so much knowledge available. We can't possibly know it all. And there's a lot of research that says when we work together with other students, that we learn more deeply and we understand things better. So we develop critical thinking through working collaboratively with other students. So collaboration is a really key one. It can, with all the life competencies, they're related. But yeah, collaboration can definitely bring out these other life competencies too.
And it helps us build a better society, right?
Yeah,
In a way. Rodrigo George asks how to assess English learning in context of basic education. Should we focus mainly on reading and overall language, or shift to overlooking mistakes and assessing competencies?
Yeah, this is always a difficult one when we're sort of trying to balance, and I think, and it is a bit of a balance. I don't think we can just say, okay, it doesn't matter about accuracy anymore. It doesn't matter if the language is not there. As long as they've got the competency, then that's fine. I think all competencies need a foundation of knowledge. So I don't think we should be throwing out the basics that we've built up, that we've been doing traditionally so far. But I do think we should try and integrate a bit more competencies into what we assess. It's not easy. We're still working out how to do that, but I think that will be how assessments go in the future. It won't just be about English language. It will be a mix of different skills.
The idea of the multidisciplinarity, right?
In a way, yeah.
So we have this teacher from Campo Belo. His name is Richard. He's talking from Minas Gerais. How could you use this sort of material for teams? He's asking specifically about the upcycling activity.
Yeah, I think this could work really nicely for teens, actually. So perhaps some of your suggestions, instead of being like, oh, make a toy or make something that young learners would like, make it a bit more suitable for that age group. There are still lots of things you could make using upcycling ideas. So maybe they could go onto the internet and find ideas of what other people have done on upcycling websites or Pinterest. There are lots of ideas that are quite grown up, actually. And I mean, I've done upcycling with a group of adults as well. So it's suitable for all ages. It just depends how you frame it. So absolutely, I think a lot of these activities you can change a little bit and make suitable for other age groups.
Perfect, thank you. Oh, see that the questions didn't not stop coming. William Pinheiro asks, how can we do to motivate our students to participate of class, like when you're talking about the online classes? I think that this motivation is one of the main questions we see coming already.
Yeah. And similarly to the other question about online classes, we're still trying to find our way, I guess, about how to do this. So I don't know if I have the perfect answer. But how do we motivate students to participate? I think about what you do to help to motivate them to participate in the real classroom and take some of that into the online. So what we do in the real classroom often is we will get students to talk in pairs first or in groups first, so that they feel confident to share, and then ask the whole class, and then you can get students to be more confident in participating. If it's more about motivating to do anything in the class, I'm not sure if this is what the question is asking. Again, that is a really, really difficult question. But I do think life competencies, introducing these kind of materials, can actually motivate students that aren't so motivated normally. So perhaps try some of these activities and see if it, bringing things into the real world makes students more motivated.
One question relating to you: how do you motivate yourself? When you try to remember to achieve your first memory of preparing yourself for your first online classes. Could you share with us how it was, this preparation? How do you try to motivate yourself to be there in such an awkward situation?
Well, I actually started, I haven't taught online recently in the pandemic, but I did teach online a few years ago, but that was mainly one-to-one. But I do remember feeling very, very nervous the first time. And there was something very, very nerve-wracking about going on camera even though face-to-face
Yeah.
would be so bad. So I do remember really feeling very nervous about it, and I did get used to it. I did it for a couple of years, like that, one-to-one online. But yeah, it was unusual, and I found I had to prepare. I took a lot more time to prepare things because I had to adapt them to the online setting. So yeah, it was a steep learning curve at the beginning, but I actually grew to really like it, the online teaching.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's a nice mindset for you to share. That's why I asked you, because we were forced to jump into this online way of living and thinking and learning.
Yeah.
But it's something that was coming gradually, and of course it has its points of preparation. But I think you guys, all of you, are very, how can I say, prepared to do it. How can I say, easily. I know that I can talk on myself. Like being in front of a camera is always a little bit nervous, make you feel a little bit nervous. But it's something that it gets better along the way, right? How do you feel about it?
Yeah.
I think we have time for one last question. Do you feel that the motivation? I think no, it was the same about motivation on online classes. I think thank you very much, Jasmin, especially because I heard that it's like 8 p.m. there where you are. You in the UK, it's 8 p.m. already.
Yeah, it's so it's 9 o'clock now, but yeah, it's quite. I don't think I would have done anything that exciting with my evening anyway, in lockdown. So it's been great to do something a lot more exciting by presenting. So yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been a real pleasure, and thanks so much again for everyone who's contributed, because I'm sure lots of people will have picked up ideas from something that you've written. So brilliant.
We are thankful and honored that we have a lot of comments on our side thanking you for your kindness, for your support. Thank you very much. And for those of you who wants to know about the certificate, there will be a QR code after this conference, and then you can download. Thank you very much again, Jasmin. I hope I can see you soon. And after so much deep and deep and interesting content, now it's the first time for our Inspire session. First, we'll have Purushottam Adasa, who will guide us into a lecture about Hatha Yoga and pranayamas, which are the respiratory exercise used in the practice of yoga. The lecture will be in Portuguese. After that, we'll have a short break and then return for the last webinar of the first day of Cambridge Day 2020. Enjoy it.
E estou aqui hoje para falar um pouquinho com vocês sobre yoga no Cambridge Day. Eu gostaria de começar falando com vocês um pouquinho sobre alguns conceitos que formam a base para o praticante. Nós chamamos de sadhaka, tá? É o praticante de yoga. E essa base ajuda a gente a controlar um pouco as nossas paixões. O que são essas paixões? A busca pela satisfação dos sentidos, né? E essa busca pela satisfação dos sentidos pode gerar, muitas vezes, frustração, né? Porque nós temos uma ideia do que nós queremos e às vezes, essa vontade é frustrada. E a frustração dessas vontades acabam se transformando em ira, e a ira tira o nosso pensamento de prumo, né? E aí a gente acaba tomando decisões precipitadas, decisões erradas e encontrando dificuldades para lidar com algumas situações. Todo o conhecimento do yoga foi compilado por um sábio chamado Patanjali, que deu origem ao Ashtanga Yoga, que é o yoga de 8 partes, tá? As 2 primeiras partes formam uma base muito concisa, né, para o sadhaka conseguir manter a mente mais tranquila. Essas duas partes se desdobram, cada uma, em mais 5 pontos, tá? E eu vou falar rapidamente sobre cada um deles, tá? O primeiro ponto, dentro do Yama, que é a primeira parte do Ashtanga Yoga, é a Ahimsa, que é a não violência. Não violência no sentido mais grosseiro, é simplesmente não violentar outras pessoas, outros seres, mas a gente pode ir trazendo isso para uma coisa mais sutil, para alimentação, o que nós estamos dando para o nosso corpo, né? Qual tipo de alimento a gente está ingerindo, o que isso influencia positivamente ou negativamente no nosso corpo, no nosso pensamento, e até em outras questões, emoções, a maneira como nós lidamos, a maneira como nós nos dirigimos ao mundo, né? Tudo isso para criar uma convivência um pouco mais harmônica, tá? A segunda parte do Yama é Satya, ou veracidade. Quando seu discurso, pensamentos e atitudes estão alinhadas, né? Então, isso é veracidade, tá? Não é simplesmente não mentir. Não mentir é um começo, mas alinhar pensamento, atitudes, fala, isso te leva a uma atitude veraz, né? Uma atitude verdadeira. O terceiro ponto dentro do Yama, tá? É Asteya, que é não roubar. Não roubar não só no sentido de não se apropriar de algo que não é seu, tá? Mas também não roubar energia, né? Isso é uma coisa muito importante. A gente vive numa sociedade onde nós somos bombardeados o tempo todo com né, informações, prazos. Então, a maneira como a gente lida com o outro, lida com nós mesmos, tentando não ter um gasto excessivo de energia e não roubar a energia excessivamente do outro. O próximo aspecto dentro do Yama é o Brahmacharya. O Brahmacharya é o estudo da filosofia, né? O estudo da filosofia aliado à continência, a não desperdiçar energia desnecessariamente, tá? E para fechar o Yama, nós temos a Parigraha. A Parigraha é viver de maneira simples, ok? Aqui eu não digo que você não pode ter bens, não pode, né, procurar conforto, não é isso, tá? É bem longe disso. Mas é viver de maneira em que você não permita que as coisas tomem conta de você, tomem conta do seu tempo e tomem conta de sua mente, entendeu? Então é viver de uma maneira em que você tenha total liberdade sobre a sua própria vida. Entrando agora no segundo passo do Ashtanga Yoga, né? Nós temos o Niyama. Dentro do Niyama também existem 5 desdobramentos. O primeiro é Saucha, tá? Que significa pureza. Pureza no sentido literal mesmo da palavra, de você procurar a limpeza, né? Por fora, né? De maneira externa, com o seu próprio corpo, o ambiente onde você vive, tudo isso gera um ambiente mais satívico, mais no modo da bondade. Mas também a gente tem que lembrar que Saucha é a limpeza interna. A gente fala um pouquinho das emoções, né? Que tipo de emoções você está cultivando, que tipo de emoções você está mantendo ali dentro, né? Que tipo de emoções você está cultivando. Passando agora para o segundo ponto dentro do Yama, nós temos Santosha. Santosha é o contentamento. Nós vivemos numa sociedade onde nós somos muito cobrados a ter, a ser, a mostrar um certo status e uma série de coisas. Isso gera muita aflição, porque nós estamos o tempo todo buscando a satisfação dos sentidos, buscando coisas que nem sempre são coisas que nós realmente precisamos. Passando agora para um outro ponto dentro do Niyama, tapas. Tapas é aquele esforço diário e com um foco, um objetivo muito bem definido. E dentro do aprendizado de yoga, nós entendemos que cada aluno tem o seu processo, tá? E aí, dentro de cada processo, você vai encontrar facilidades e dificuldades, cada um tem as suas. E etapas, nesse caso específico, é você entender que você precisa fazer um esforço para manter uma certa posição, manter um asana, aumentar um pouquinho a flexibilidade. Isso muitas vezes causa um pequeno desconforto, mas é importante que esse esforço seja feito para que você consiga avançar, tá? Passado para o próximo ponto, tá? Nós temos Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya é o autoestudo apoiado pelo conhecimento, né? Então, você interiorizar, olhar o que tem ali dentro, entender aquelas emoções, entender o que ela gera em você, se aquilo realmente deve estar ali ou não deve. Então, esse autoestudo, esse mergulho para dentro é muito importante também para você buscar uma mente mais tranquila e uma mente que não fique oscilando com esse bombardeio de informações e de cobranças que nós temos no dia a dia. Por último, dentro do Niyama, nós temos o Ishvara Pranidhana, tá? Então, eu gosto de falar um pouco sobre Yama e Niyama como se fosse um manual de instruções. E você vai seguindo, tá? Vai seguindo, olhando cada parte, realmente colocando em prática aquilo no dia a dia. E chega um momento em que alguns acontecimentos, algumas coisas já fogem um pouco das nossas mãos. Então, Ishvara Pranidhana é a entrega, tá? Então, você foi, correu tudo certinho, fez tudo direitinho, tudo certinho. Muito provavelmente, tudo vai dar certo. As coisas boas vão começar a acontecer, você vai conseguir ter um pouco mais de tranquilidade para tomar decisões, ou para reformular algumas coisas, né? Às vezes alguma coisa não saiu exatamente como você gostaria, então você tem a tranquilidade, tem a cabeça ali focada para tomar uma decisão, para reformular as coisas, para ficar tudo bem. Então, é essa entrega, tá? Então, é como se fosse um manualzinho de instrução que, se você seguir direitinho, provavelmente tudo vai dar certo, tá? Então, essas são as duas partes que formam uma base muito concreta de quem pratica o yoga. Na vida, principalmente nos grandes centros, a gente está sempre correndo, né? Sempre tentando cumprir prazo e fazer com que as coisas caibam dentro do nosso dia. Tem 24 horas e muitas vezes não dá tempo da gente executar tudo que a gente precisa. E a respiração vai ficando de lado, vai ficando de lado. E a gente respira sem perceber. Normalmente a respiração, na maioria das pessoas, fica muito aqui em cima, né? A gente não usa totalmente o pulmão. E isso gera aflição. A gente não percebe, muitas vezes a gente está ali aflito ou está se sentindo ansioso e não sabe de onde vem essa ansiedade. A respiração tem uma influência muito grande nisso. O primeiro exercício que eu gostaria que vocês fizessem é de sentir a respiração e entender onde ela está, ok? Então eu gostaria que vocês colocassem a mão direita sobre o peito, tá? E a mão esquerda aqui sobre o abdômen. E façam uma respiração profunda, boca fechada e respirando pela narina, ok? E eu quero que vocês sintam aonde há uma expansão, em primeiro lugar. Se ela está mais aqui no peito ou se ela está no abdômen, ok? Sentindo e percebendo a respiração, vocês vão conseguir entender se a sua respiração está mais aqui em cima, se ela está mais fechada, ou se você está usando um pouco mais do pulmão para expandir e conseguir inflar mais o pulmão, quem estiver sentindo a respiração um pouco mais aqui em cima, puxa o ar e tenta trazer a respiração para o abdômen. Tá? No primeiro momento, isso pode ser um pouco estranho, né? Nós estamos acostumados a respirar de uma maneira e agora você está trazendo uma nova maneira de respirar e o seu corpo às vezes não entende muito bem. Então, puxa o ar, traz para o abdômen, infla o abdômen, traz o ar aqui para o peito e empurra o ar para fora, fazendo uma leve pressão com o diafragma, ok? Então, vai inspirar, fazer uma leve pressão com o diafragma, empurrando o ar para fora. O próximo exercício que eu quero fazer com vocês é um pranayama chamado Nadishodhana. Nadishodhana é a limpeza dos canais de energia do nosso corpo. Ele entra na categoria de kriyas também dentro do yoga. Kriyas são limpezas que o sadhana faz e esse pranayama que ele traz a limpeza também dos canais energéticos, ajudando a energia a fluir mais livremente pelo nosso corpo. Então, primeiro eu gostaria que vocês sentassem numa posição muito confortável, pode ser numa cadeira, apoiado com as costas, para deixar a costa bem reta, ok? Não tem necessidade de sentar em alguma posição de meditação, isso não tem necessidade, você pode sentar numa cadeira de maneira bem confortável, e a ideia é que você não sinta nenhuma parte do seu corpo, não tem nenhum desconforto em nenhuma parte do seu corpo, tá? Sua mente tem que estar totalmente voltada para a respiração. Então, o Nadishodhana começa assim. Nós dobramos, né, o dedo médio e o indicador, tá? O anular e o mindinho ficam estendidos aqui, um do lado do outro, e o polegar também levantado, ok? Vai trazer o polegar até a narina direita, tá? E vai fechar bem, uma pressão muito leve, tá? Vai fechar a narina direita. A narina esquerda está aberta, então vocês vão puxar o ar, vão inspirar, tá? Pela narina esquerda. É importante que essa inspiração e também a expiração ocorram de maneira bem leve. Quanto mais suave for, né, essa entrada de ar e a saída de ar, melhor, tá? Então, voltando lá. Narina direita fechada, vai inspirar pela narina esquerda. Quando o pulmão estiver cheio, vocês vão trocar e vão fechar a narina esquerda, liberando a narina direita. Narina direita liberada, vai soltar o ar por ela, ok? Soltou o ar, vai inspirar pela narina direita novamente. Quando o pulmão estiver cheio, aí sim vai trocar. Vai soltar o ar pela narina esquerda. E assim nós vamos executando a respiração. Podem fechar os olhos, tá? E trazer realmente a sua atenção à respiração. A cada inspiração e expiração, você pode imaginar o ar entrando, inflando o pulmão, o caminho que ele faz para sair da narina, e assim vai respirando de maneira tranquila, suave, por algumas vezes. Conforme vocês forem praticando, incluindo a respiração no dia a dia, vocês vão conseguir fazer mais vezes e se manter mais tempo respirando. E isso vai trazer muitos benefícios. Muito obrigado. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I hope you all like it. I actually do this breathing exercise, this pranayama, as part of my, I do Ayurveda classes. Oh, see the light bringing on here again. How are you? So this pranayama, this breathing exercise, it's amazing for focus, for concentration. I certainly recommend. And here, just to do another, just to bring another reminder. I'm just here to remind you that Cambridge Brazil's Instagram is like a book of stories about educators, where not only we share pedagogical and interactive content, but also we connect with teachers from all over Brazil. Please follow Cambridge Brazil on Instagram. Don't forget to tag us on your posts and stories about this experience you're having here at Cambridge Day 2020. And now we'll have a small break. It will be, and then we will return with our last webinar of the day. See you soon.